the recording. Okay, good. I'll have the transcript that went from the earlier portion in this, and I'll make that available as well, but in case anybody wants any of the conversation. But okay, so what we normally do at Understanding Tech is to have an open forum first, and we've pretty much already had started an open forum. Um, Bob chimed in with a lot of good information, and Sid was explaining his dynamic backgrounds there. I'll know what they're dynamic when that dog gets up and leaves.
Ah, well,
Uh,
it's not so much that it was that. I was saying whether you said get yourself to gallery or dynamic gallery mode.
Yeah,
It
dynamic.
will adjust the faces over, and you're never quite sure what it's going to do with them when you do that. On the other hand, it packs the images much tighter.
Yeah.
yeah,
It's like an autofocus camera that tries to follow you. I think I've had most of mine turned off, but I have a couple times where it says, "Oh, I can handle where you've moved to." How did it know?
that is one of the features that uses up a lot of battery on my laptop if I do it in Zoom.
Yeah. Yes, especially if it's trying to do it. I'm not sure. I thought the Nexigo camera, in my case, is doing it for Zoom. I don't think Zoom can actually tell unless it's actually dynamically changing the camera feed, but it could. Yeah, it's very possible.
Well, what OBS Studio does and what SplitCam does, either one of them will create a virtual webcam.
Mhm.
And the virtual webcam can be merged into any applications.
Right.
Oh,
And so
Sanford. Whoa.
Yeah.
so
Yeah,
it's a lot cleaner in Zoom.
yeah.
Yeah. That's actually what I'm doing right now.
Yeah, but Drew, you do sometimes disappear into your background.
Yeah. Yeah.
You don't have a true green screen, and neither do I.
No.
I just have a blurred background, and you will see occasionally something will focus in the back behind me, but
Hmm.
yeah, we'll see. I have a
But
bag hanging up back there.
Yeah, it likes to take the focus.
the
But
Oh,
yeah,
Now, I actually do have a real green screen behind me.
yeah, and you
But
told Zoom that.
yeah, I
yeah.
did. I did.
Good.
Um,
Um
but it's a little tricky because there's a window behind it. So if there's light streaming, it the green shifts,
Uh,
and therefore it you get an effect coming from behind it that's caused by that. And I don't know why it's
yeah.
making me pink, but it keeps making me pink.
that's another thing that SplitCam can do. It can adjust colors and tones and apply effects.
Yeah.
And that's what a virtual
Um,
webcam generally is capable of doing. It can make a washed out face look more normal. It can do things like
um,
that. But so can a good ring light.
yeah. What are the primary benefits that you get from having a real green screen?
Your supposedly your image won't disappear into the background as badly
Well, it knows
because
the edges, basically.
unless you're wearing a green shirt.
yeah, it's color keyed, it's chroma keyed.
Yeah.
So if you're wearing something a little greener than my shirt,
Yeah.
you might disappear.
There goes.
There you go. Sid's going to disappear into his background.
Yeah.
Yeah, I should look into getting one of those and see what it's like.
Yeah. Uh, do we want to? Do we want to during the recorded part of the meeting go back over the issue that I had with my laptop with Zoom
Yeah,
and
go ahead. Yeah,
things that drain the battery because it's a
sure.
graphics situation
Yes, it is.
and other people might experience it if they have advanced graphics. My laptop is a Framework 13. It is based on the AMD Ryzen AI300 series. Now, that has an NPU that uses artificial intelligence. Windows, if I use Zoom in its normal setup, the graphics acceleration doesn't work properly. It tends to use the CPU for graphics, and that's Really bad on battery life. I only get 2 hours of battery life if I do that. My screen refresh rate can be reduced from 120 hertz to 60, and that'll help. But the thing that Windows has, if you're willing to turn on the AI function, and I think you may have to be logged in with a Microsoft account. I don't know if you have to be an administrator to do this, but you have to have a connection sufficient that the Microsoft Windows AI is working. Then the AI has an effect called Studio Effects. Studio Effects can take the graphics and shift it over to the NPU, which has a much more energy efficient configuration. It's an efficiency type of core, and NPUs are actually better at vector processing than GPUs, especially since I don't have dedicated video RAM in that laptop. I have what is called it's not shared, it's unified graphics, which is an AMD thing. And it sets aside a certain specified amount of RAM to work with a portion of the chip that calls itself a GPU. Windows sees it as a GPU, but it really is more like a CPU. It's more like one of the cores of a core on a CPU. The point is, there is a hierarchy of energy use. You're most efficient with an NPU. Second most efficient is a GPU with video RAM. Third most efficient is this unified memory with this sort of fake GPU and dedicated system RAM, at least DDR4, preferably DDR5 speed. And the worst you can do is the CPU is handling all the graphics. And those make a big difference in how much battery life you get in programs like Zoom.
I wonder if that makes a big difference on those entry-level laptops that have like one real core and a bunch of computational cores on the small end Intels.
Intel and AMD, it probably will not. NVIDIA and other ARM systems are system on a chip, and they have multiple cores, lots of different cores. They have graphics cores, they have computational cores, they have what are known as performance cores, and they have efficiency cores. Efficiency cores use much less energy, but they're much less powerful processors.
Yeah, but can you use? I know that I'm familiar on some of the replacements for the old Intel i3 are now use like a bunch of efficiency cores and one computational core, one
Right.
real core, I call it. And I just wondered how they would handle running Zoom, and they're low-end machines anyway. So are they more efficient because they are
Well,
using less processors?
I
well, I have a Chromebook that's a low processor device, and I get 8 to 10 hours of battery life on it. And even if I do Zoom for an hour or so, so it all depends on the operating system. The operating system has a big impact. Windows itself uses a lot of battery.
Yeah, that's true.
yeah.
I found well, I noticed a couple things. This is a Ryzen 7, and it will actually change the number of cores actively in use depending on whether I'm in battery or if I'm plugged in. If I'm plugged in, it'll use all 16. If it's only on battery, it likes to lean on only 4.
Yeah, that's another way of doing it.
So
But anyway, these efficiency cores can really save battery life. But there are some drawbacks to using them. And Zoom itself does not know about these various graphics configurations. It's the operating system that you have to set up. And there are features in Windows that require the AI to be turned on.
wonderful. That's something I'm trying not to do.
Well, the thing is, if your AI isn't turned on, your Windows system basically doesn't even know you have an NPU.
I'm hoping. Well, I don't have an NPU either, so.
But the thing is, my Framework 13 does.
Yeah.
So it could function as a Copilot PC. It has enough tops for that. It has something like 50 tops, which is sufficient.
Okay, that sounds
But
good.
I don't want to be running it as a Copilot PC.
Yeah. Sid, you raised your hand.
I did. I can lower too. I can up, I can down. What a concept. No, seriously. One sort of apropos to Bob's thoughts. I have been trying to tune various LLMs forever. I mean, I've been trying to find the balance and the best environment. I paid $360 to upgrade the RAM. I think I mentioned that last time. So I now actually have 64 gig in the machine. Um, and that helps a lot. But it's a 14th gen Intel chip, but it doesn't have a real GPU, which means everything is CPU bound. And no, I'm not spending $8 million for a graphics card right now. The ones I've looked, the only one that's in the reasonable range is a B70, which is Intel's GPU card, which used to be about 949 and now is 1400 on sale for about 1250 occasionally. All these things are just rising at an incredible rate. It's a supply and demand curve, and right now they're selling as many of these chips as they can to data centers. So prices are insane on video cards right now, and on memory and on storage. I bought a 20 terabyte external Western Digital about a year and a half ago for $180. That's $900 today.
Oh, jeez.
I mean, the pricing has gotten absolutely crazy on a lot of this stuff. It really has. So anyway, back to the story. So I installed something called Unsloth Studio. The Unsloth people do custom builds of the open source models to optimize, but uses some cool technology which you can read about on their page. Instead of normally each layer in the model is weighted the same, they don't do that. They instead look at the layers and weight some heavier than others, which gives it better performance and also lets it run in less memory, which is kind of a good thing. The next thing I had to do was I run it under Proxmox. So one of the next steps I had to do was its container that Unsloth Studio is in, I had to disable swap completely. You do not want a model to get to swap. That means everything is going off disk, which means glacial performance, like zero point 0.1 tokens a second if it gets to swap.
Well,
Not
you
a
have to have
great
all
thing.
the memory dedicated for that to do that.
You have to have enough memory to hold the model and to hold the rest of its structures. You do, which having 64 gig in there now makes that a lot easier. The other thing you can do in Proxmox is you can actually lock a container to the specific cores of the processor. And so what you want to do is specifically lock it to those performance cores.
Mhm.
Because the rule is this, in a way it's stupid, but the way it does it is the slowest core that's used sets the speed for everything. The others sit and wait for the slow bee to get there, which means if
That's
you
also true, Sid. That's also true of I/O. It's true of any
yeah,
kind
yeah,
of
yeah,
data flow. I like with USB. The slowest device sets the
Controls
pace
the
for the
speed.
entire bus.
Yep.
yeah, yeah. So what you have to do is specifically lock it to the P cores instead of the E cores.
Okay.
For exactly that reason. So swap off, lock it to the performance cores, give it enough memory, and then pick a model that's specifically optimized. Oh, and by the way, if you go into settings on Unsloth Studio, you can lock it that you only have a CPU, in which case it won't try to run Vulkan. And with Vulkan will work, but it adds an extra step because then Vulkan has to look first and see there's no graphics card here. I have to go in CPU mode. If you specifically lock it to CPU mode, it doesn't need that step and it doesn't need the memory that Vulkan uses as part of its structure. So you turn that one off. Then there are 842 other settings to change. What's cool is it will do a lot of them on its own. It'll optimize some of it on its own. And I've been playing with the new Quen 3.827B, the Unsloth derivative. The answers it gives are incredibly nuanced and good. But I can only get about 1.7 to 2.1 tokens a second with it. And it doesn't matter which quant level I use, it's still not getting much above that. And from my reading, it seems to be an issue with the model. The models are either MOE or dense. Basically, MOE means if it's 31 gig of parameters, it's only got, say, 3 gig active at any one time, where the dense ones like Quen is 27 billion, 27.8 to be exact, and they're all active all the time.
Sid, a couple of questions.
Yeah.
First of all, can this environment detect when you have an NPU and offload some of the processing that way?
It would be nice if it did. Unfortunately, the drivers just aren't there yet. And it's not just on the Linux side. I'm also running the Windows version of Unsloth Studio to play with much smaller models because I only have 16 gig in the notebook. And that's an Intel Ultra chip. It's got the NPU, and it can't use it. They haven't tailored the ability to use it. There's an ITX interface from Intel, and if you run under that, it can use it, but it's not very well optimized, so it ends up not being faster because they just haven't done the optimization that some of the other platforms have done, which is kind of sad.
Well, maybe you need to look at this new company. Did you hear about this one? Ramp.
Stay out of there.
Ramp is a company that basically takes your AI load and finds the lowest cost AI provider and makes use and steers your tokens to the best price for the amount. If you run into overages or something, then it can switch to a different one.
There are multiple providers that do that. And some of them are quite good at that, looking at specifically the job stream, the kind of tasks you're doing, and then routing it to the cheapest that will do the what it needs. So there are a bunch of those. That's not particularly new. I'm trying to run everything local to keep private and keep my stuff to be my stuff.
So Palantir does not knock on your door?
With Zerpy here, nobody knocks at my door, but that's she doesn't like it, so they don't tend to knock at my door much. But hey, what can I tell you? No, it's so I was also playing with the latest Gemma 4. There are a couple new Gemma 4s that are out, and I don't, Bob, I don't know if you've played with different quant sizes.
I haven't been doing LLMs locally. I don't do much with AI at all.
Okay. What they have come up with is a way to do 1 bit quantization. it basically neuters a model because it makes it moderately stupid.
Mm-hmm.
On the other hand, they've then come up, the latest thing they're doing are called QAT models, QAT. And what QAT does is it tortures the model basically, prods it and tortures it, puts it in a tight environment and lets it learn while that's happening.
Mhm.
I mean, the common way of always doing it was first you trained it at full width,
Mhm.
and then you smushed it, and it would work as it would work. The latest technology stuff like quad is you smush while you're training it, so it learns how to respond under adverse widths and conditions. Um, so basically, you
Interesting.
torture it and you squish it down. So you can get a 27 billion parameter model that sits in under 4 gig,
Oh,
with one bit. And there are multiple of them right now. The results you get are not incredibly good. On the other hand, there's another technology called IUD, which uses a stacked weighting of the layers and a two quantization of 2 bits instead of 1 or 1.5. It's actually quite coherent and it can run in a fairly small amount of memory. Slowly, because it has to sort of detangle, for lack of a better word, as it's going on the bits. And the last one I'll throw out at you, and I think this is hilarious. There's Kimi 3, which is 2.4 trillion parameters with, I think, 300 billion active at any time. And they figured out a way to run that in 64 gig of memory. It sits on disk and it pulls pieces as they're needed. So
Yep.
you just need a large drive. The problem, obviously, is performance is not exciting. But as a lab experiment, they were able to make the whole model run and respond in 64 gig of memory.
wow. Interesting.
Mm.
Okay. Sanford, you got your hand up. Go ahead.
I do. New direction on a question. Well, one
Sure.
is going to pan off of this AI is, does anyone have a preference for an AI engine that's best for photo manipulation besides ChatGPT? Harry?
Again, I'm not an expert at this, but I use Nano Banana through Google Gemini. Do you have a particular question?
Well, not a particular question. We're actually going through like some house remodeling concepts and upload the house, tell the ChatGPT, if you will, change the roof to this kind of brand roof and colors, change the siding to this and that, and do this. And ChatGPT does a pretty good job, but as you go through the variations of it, it often changes the colors. And you'll see bricks that you uploaded the brick and say, this is the brick color. The next time it comes back with a rendition, it changed the colors. So we're trying to, I was just asking, does anyone have a better engine to use than this?
Try it with the Google Gemini, but yeah, that
we did try Gemini, did not have a lot of good satisfactory luck with that.
Mm-hmm. I know the Nano Banana is usually a premium feature, but some Google accounts are being offered like 2 months free use of Nano Banana. I don't know if your Gmail account got that recently, but if you haven't been using the premium accounts, you might find it offered. I know I got one offered just like day before yesterday.
Okay. All right.
Okay.
Some of the hallucinations that Sanford describes, I may not get it the third time I edit, but the fourth, fifth, sixth, if I go back and say, that's great, but now make this change, now make this change. By the time I do the fourth or fifth, unsolicited changes appear that I never asked that I was happy with the third or fifth or sixth iteration. I think that's what you're referring to.
Yeah, but also keep in mind that we with the unpaid free models, you only get so many renditions you can do before you run up against the paywall, if you will. And if you're having to correct the mistake that it made, that counts against you. It does not. They don't give you a freebie if you tell it, no, you did that wrong. You changed this, and I didn't tell you to do that. Sorry, you lost a rendition.
Yeah.
Because photo manipulation takes a lot more oomph, if you will, out of the system.
On the other hand, it can be surprisingly creative, which comes up with some surprises. Oh, that's interesting. I know it's not what you're asking, and it's discouraging when that happens.
Yeah,
but every once in a
creativity
while,
is not necessarily what we're looking for. It's more accuracy of the color accuracy of the model that we're trying to create, so that when you go in or talk to an architect or whoever, you're going to say, "This is what I want. This is how I want it to look. These colors are all as close as color match." You can't get a color match on the screens because they're not calibrated, which is a discussion I constantly have with my wife. They're not you're not going to get the accuracy here that you want because your screen's not calibrated. But it constantly changes it.
Okay, there are some variation. There are some AI agents that are derived from things like Gemini. Gemini 3.1 Flash Image is one. I don't know if these are free, by the way. GPT has Image 2, and there is Adobe Photoshop Firefly, which I'm pretty sure is not free.
Yeah, anything from Adobe is not free.
Yeah.
And there are some specialized tools like Home Designs AI, Reimagine RE is capitalized, Reimagine Home, and Spacely AI.
Thank you. And
all of which are ranked as pretty good at this sort of thing.
Okay. I did even try Adobe Photoshop Elements, which I downloaded the latest version, tried that and found out, no, this isn't even ready for prime time. Why are you hawking this where?
Right.
It actually did an inferior job at doing any renditions. So for what that's worth.
Yeah, I would try things like maybe, depending on the cost, Gemini 3.1 Flash Image or GPT Image 2.
Image 2.
Because these are more specialized versions of well-known AI engines.
All right. Thank you. Now, new question, new direction.
Okay.
I have a PC that I was trying to load a 3D printer slicer program on it, and the program the program installation balked because it said I didn't have OpenGL 2.0. One is I'm running it was running Windows 10. I'm actually running Tiny 11 on there, which could be the problem. And it's using an Intel video processor that's part of the chip. You know, it's just a built-in. So it's not a standalone. One is, how do I test to see what OpenGL I'm running? And two, is there a way that I could force this to do an upgrade? Maybe it's just a driver that I need to upgrade. Or is it a physical limitation of the computer?
You got me stumped.
The latest version of OpenGL was released in 2017, and it was 4.6.
Okay.
So you're looking for something that was probably, about 12 years ago?
Yeah, well, but OpenGL, yeah, so mine should be running OpenGL 2. Or past
well, the question is, maybe it needs to, and you're running 4.
Oh, good point. I don't know. I'm going to have to go and check. I can't tell you the answer to that question.
Usually you have a dedicated utility, OpenGL extensions viewer or something to tell you what version you're running.
Okay.
So look and see if you can find something like that runs with that machine, and maybe it'll tell you, oh, you're on 3.
And I need to roll back to a lower.
I don't know. I mean, if it's looking for OpenGL2, that sounds like it's a little long in the tooth. I'm wondering
Yeah,
how good it's going to work.
or maybe it's saying that I need to have OpenGL greater than 2. It just said you're not running
Wait a minute.
OpenGL2.
Oh, wait a minute. I just asked ChatGPT a question, and it says here, if you're asking because the program says OpenGL is missing or OpenGL 2.0 is required, you normally do not need to download OpenGL separately. Updating or installing the correct graphics driver is usually the solution.
Okay. I guess I'll have to I'll reinstall the graphic driver.
That's a good question right there, because you know how many different versions of graphic drivers, especially if this is any sort of graphics accelerator card, because there are tons of drivers out there, and some of them contain malware.
This is a Lenovo desktop, and it does not have a dedicated graphics card. It's just
What
using the Intel-based one.
Okay.
what is the name of the app again?
Um, you have to give me a moment. I'll have to go down and find out what the name of that. Wait, I might have it out here. I'll find it.
It's coming to him.
No. I got to look in the manual and see what the name was of that particular software.
Because ChatGPT wants me to tell it the name of the software, and it will check to see if OpenGL is, what the problem is.
It's CURA. Cura.
Cura.
And that should have a version. What version is it?
Well, I was trying to do is download the latest updated version of it from the website, from the manufacturer. So it'd be a current model. It's not an old software. It's be new.
Okay, let's find. Is Cura all caps?
So it's made by a company called Ultimaker, and it uses OpenGL for its 3D display. It says on Windows 11 you should not download OpenGL separately. Cura uses the OpenGL support provided by your Intel, NVIDIA, or AMD graphics driver. For recent Cura versions, the important requirement is generally OpenGL 2.0 or newer.
Okay.
If Cura is giving you an error,
I
would check the graphics driver.
Yeah. Yep. And also looks like this is apparently a problem with the software, that it cannot communicate properly with the graphics card. Outdated graphic drivers running Cura over a remote desktop. Well, I'm not doing a remote desktop.
Is it a laptop or a desktop?
Desktop.
So just throw in a cheap new graphics card.
Okay. I could do that.
Okay, if it's Ultimaker Cura, it's version 5.13.
Right.
And for Windows, what you would want then are the system requirements. So we can get those. Wait a minute, come on. All right. System requirement. REQU. Okay.
If you have to ask, you don't have it.
You need an OpenGL 2.0 compatible graphics card. OpenGL 4.1 is recommended for the 3D layer view. So Windows 10 or 11, 4 gigabytes of RAM. Graphics card must be OpenGL 2.0 compatible. OpenGL 4.1 is backward compatible with 2.0, by the way. And the storage space, you must have 2 gigabytes of disk storage. The processor needs to be at least an Intel Core i3 or an AMD Athlon 64. I think you're good there.
So you'll probably be looking for an NVIDIA GeForce 400 or newer, AMD HD 7600, 7000 series or newer, Intel HD/Iris graphics.
Yeah. The other thing is, it says it really has to be genuine Windows 11 64-bit. Tiny 11 might not have everything it needs.
And that could very well be my problem that I was having.
Yeah. I
So
Yeah, it needs some pretty advanced graphics stuff, so I'm not sure Tiny 11 has all of that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. You do have your hand up, Sid?
I did.
I'll
I
go
don't
after you.
remember what I was gonna say, but I did have my hand up. No, basically, I'm not a graphic guy, so that wasn't my area. What the best one to play with images with? It just but there are some that will even do video now, and the new model of Quen actually has video built into it. It will do up to an hour of video locally, but
Interesting.
not audio. It doesn't have audio, just video.
Okay, Drew, you had your hand up.
Yeah. I found a new Android app that everybody with an Android phone might like to look at. It's in the Google Play App Store. It's called Screen Stream, SCREENSTREAM. And what it does is it mirrors your Android phone to a web browser. So the host doesn't have to be Windows. It can be Windows, Mac, Linux, or even your TV, as long as it has a web browser. And so you can run it in local mode, which is what I'm running in it now, and it gives you what the URL is to type in 192.168.50. On port 8080, and it brings up a copy of your phone screen. And then additionally, what's nice is you don't have to have your phone paired with Windows. You don't have to be on a computer with your phone having a relationship with Windows. And you don't need any Windows software. So it works well that way. But more importantly, or as important for some people maybe, it has a global mode. And when you put it in global mode, it gives you an ID and a password. And then the person that is going to provide you with, let's say, remote technical support, opens up their web browser and they go to the URL that you give them, type in the ID and password, and they'll see your phone screen. And it works over the internet. I've tried this out. It works over the internet. You don't have to be on Wi-Fi or the same network. You can be anywhere. And if somebody calls you up and says, "Hey, I need help with my Android phone," and you're trying to talk them through it while they're looking at the screen,
Yeah,
if they
sounds
go
like
into
it would help.
this would help. Yeah.
Yeah, big time. I know I've tried to help a friend of mine who lives probably about 30 miles from me. And the problem is he still has AT&T, basically ISDN or above speeds. So and currently he's sharing it with his phone connection at the same time. So he's barely got 6 megabit per second downloads and uploads are less than a megabit. So
Ouch.
you can't share anything. You can't look at any. I used to be
Yeah.
able to log in with Quick Assist, but this just spins
That's
trying to make the connection.
yeah. That's pretty low.
I told him you need to call up your AT&T and said I'm switching to Comcast because you can't get it fast enough. Maybe they'll
He
fix
doesn't.
it then.
He needs fiber. Is what he needs.
Oh, I don't think they have fiber. This is on the chain of lakes. The fiber
Oh.
will be the last thing to go up there.
Oh, then satellite.
Well, yeah, satellite, but he doesn't want to spend money either. So he's a retired plumber. He knows how expensive things
Yeah.
can get. So we'll see how
Yeah.
that works. I told him, give him a call and see if they can at least improve it a little bit. So, I did see something on YouTube recently. It was a YouTube presentation by Adam Savage, and he had some people on with him, and they had done X-ray analysis of a number of common lithium batteries. And some of the lithium batteries, the common battery format is the 18650 format. And you can get them at Amazon. You can get name brand ones. The problem was some of the lower cost ones are actually counterfeit cells. And inside of the counterfeit cells, so as they did these X-rays, they could see that the lithium cells are made with what's called the jelly roll technique, and they wrap around, and it expects a uniform layer at the top where the contacts make the contact with the one electrode. Well, sometimes it's one of these things, a wavy type of surface that is not making reliable contact, so it doesn't have the same amperage capacity. Some of them outright lie about the capacity. They say like, oh, this is 10,000 milliampere hours in a single cell, something that hasn't been done yet, or it's beyond the technological ability to do that. But they're advertising them as such, and they're advertising them cheap. But these are actually more than likely defective cells that could actually cause spontaneous combustion. So something to, I will put that in when I put the items on the share. I will actually send a couple of things along with it, and I have the company that actually does this did do a report, and let me see. I can probably share that really quick if it will share nicely. Okay. Yes. Just want to show you some of these batteries that they had done. Get rid of that out there. Good. Okay. So you can see that the common batteries, the ones that are actually made by OEMs, the Murata, the Samsung, the Panasonic, are uniform across the top of the jelly roll. These are the jelly rolls standing vertically here. And then if you look at the rewrapped cells, they actually take cells, take them out of their packaging and rewrap them again to resell them under a different policy. But you can see these names are here. And then you have the counterfeit cells, and you can see how much different it is compared to the other ones. So as part of the YouTube presentation, they also offered a copy of this report that I can share with you as well, if you're interested. And like I said, it was quite enlightening that why you would want to, if you're going to be purchasing lithium cells yourself, you should opt for the quality ones at a little bit better price than the cheapest ones that are available, thinking that they're all the same, because they definitely are not. And I did see your mask, Drew.
I was wondering if anybody was going to say anything.
It wasn't a kitty head, though, like the one the lawyer.
It's not a Zoom mask. It's a real one. It's a real pair of glasses.
Yeah, I see. Interesting. All right. Any other items for open forum? I
had one, but I forgot.
You'll think of it in a moment. I can. Let me open up my PDF thing here. Okay, that's this. Here's the. Okay, so let me. I'll do this. There's a couple of YouTube videos that I had discovered. Let me share this thing. I'll share this thing, and it will have the links then as well. So this is the flaw in the lithium-ion batteries. This other one that came out, this guy is probably based in some Asian company. No, I don't remember where he was. Where did he say he was? I think it's an Asian. He had a little slight accent. But he took an old power supply and he built a lab-grade power supply with it. So an old PC power supply, took it out of its chassis, cut off the extra connectors that weren't necessary, added another regulator so he could do like a 0 to 60 volt 2 amp power supply, and he could have additional 12 volt and 5 volt power supplies. He didn't need the negative ones, but he had the positive ones available. So he used an old ATX power supply to do this, and he did it with a 3D printed chassis. So I thought, oh, that's kind of interesting. Other thing that I've come across recently, sometimes when you're looking at equipment to diagnose it, you're trying to figure out, does it support a JTAG interface? Sometimes JTAG may be the only way to diagnose a piece of hardware that has failed. By soldering a JTAG header onto it and using a JTAG interface, you can sometimes exercise, or that's how they sometimes load initial flash contents on some devices. When you don't have any bootstrap on it, this is how you can put it on there for the first time. But I'll put this whole document into the share and you can go watch these videos. I thought they were quite interesting. And for those of you that have cats, your cat doesn't see you as human. Here's what you really are to them. You're a large, dumb parent. As in a feline. That's how they look at us. But I'm stealing their thunder. This was an interesting thing that I happened to see. So, all right. Let's see. And let's go ahead and find the presentation here. Hopefully I got it here.
Wow.
There we go. All right. Recently I had the experience of having a Windows 11 problem with this laptop. And it just came right out of nowhere, surprised, and it was quite interesting. I wasn't at home. I was trying to scan some stuff in and print some items out at our church and doing nothing more than NAPS2 and printing out color images. And all of a sudden, in the middle of doing some of this work, the laptop decided to commit harikiri. I don't know if something got downloaded, a virus or something that snuck through, a zero-day exploit. I'm not sure at all what happened. None of the other machines that were there had this problem. But my machine, all of a sudden, when you're sitting there operating, you're trying to do a scan, and all of a sudden it says your antivirus software is off. Like, what? That was kind of weird. You know, so you see your antivirus disabled, you try and re-enable it, and it's not going to re-enable. In fact, it gives you some strange screen that says your IT manager has disabled this antivirus scan. It's like that's not normal. This is not a group policy thing either, something else. So I tried to load Chrome, and Chrome failed to load. Firefox failed to load, giving me strange errors. You're like, okay, Edge could load, but I was trying to do some screenshots as well, and all of my Microsoft 365 apps stopped loading as well. They gave me some cryptic error messages like, whoa. I even went as far as using a restore point and trying to do a restore point, but that didn't help at all either. So I ended up trying to download a new, I remember I had Windows Defender that came in as well with Microsoft 365. So I tried to load it through the store again. And I had Defender running, but it wouldn't run Defender antivirus. Wouldn't pull any new antivirus updates. It's the service said it was failing to load. So the antivirus, Microsoft Defender service failing to load at the service level. And I'm thinking, okay, do I lose most of my files and just restore from the backup a week ago? Do I try and make a backup of this first and see if I can get the files back? And I said, I've never played with Windows Reset. Maybe this is a good time to try. Worst I can do is I have to go back a week. So I said, save the files, lose the apps. So I did a reset. I started this at 11:25 at night and left it to run somewhat overnight. I checked in at 12:15. It was still in the process of resetting. And it kept on running. I left it run overnight, and I figured out somewhere around 3:40 it must have rebooted, and it was waiting for the last couple steps where it requires a human to get involved at about 4 o'clock in the morning, and let it continue. And after it was done, okay, I had Windows 11 back, but I had none of my apps. Basically, very few of the apps. Now, one thing that I did do when I first set up this machine, I kept almost all of the downloaded apps that I used in a directory on downloads. It did not touch those as they were files. So all the downloaded apps were still there. And I noticed that OneDrive did not get reset to factory default, where it starts backing everything up and trying to copy it away. It's like, oh, that's good. It came back to the original McAfee antivirus that got shipped on this unit. Like, I had to take that off. So I removed that and put Windows Defender back on, because my luck with McAfee in the past has not been good. McAfee has let in way too much stuff and has not really protected. I did use the Windows Defender to scan selected areas of some of the files to see if there's anything there. Nothing showed up. So I had to go back to setting the title bar. I had to load a new copy of Chrome, loaded Microsoft 365. It wanted to do Windows updates, and unfortunately, this was right after Update Tuesday, so the next update that was waiting for me was August. Bam! And it did do the Windows anti-malware virus scan as a function of the updates, and it didn't find anything either. Because Chrome came back as new, and you lose the stuff that's down in the app data, or a lot of the stuff in app data. The profiles I needed to set up weren't there. Nothing was there. I did change my decision for Adobe DC Reader. I was tired of clicking on it at various times, and it wanted to do some update at the most inopportune time. So I started using PDF Gear instead. Does not have tabs, but it does do a quick display. Sometimes it gets messed up printing multiple pages to certain printers. But other than that, it's free, doesn't require anything, and I can control when it does its updates. Firefox, I also installed it. I had to recover some passwords from that I needed to save in that. I did this time have a Firefox account for saving the passwords and recovery. And I reinstalled my Macrium Reflect and Notepad and QuickBooks and PC Manager. So by running PC Manager at this time, after it had done its restore, I could get rid of some of the old stuff that it had reinstalled around. So it saved a whole lot of storage by freeing up the unused versions of the operating system. I thought I was going to have to reinstall all my drivers, but lo and behold, Windows Reset does not discard your drivers. Keeps them around. On my 4000N, I thought I was going to have to go search for the same thing I used before. Didn't need it. It was still there. All I had to do is set up another printer, use the driver, and it found it. I did need to use the brother utilities to bring in the utilities that go with the printers. Those didn't stay, but the drivers did. And I had to update some SMB settings for access my QNAP NAS. Otherwise, it had some issues trying to validate. Then finally, I was able to use that, and I could pull up the old backups that I had in case I wanted to pull and compare any files from the new one. One of the things that I had set up all of my Google profiles at one time, and then during one of these steps previous to this, after we did the Windows 11 reset, it nuked all of the profiles. I'm not sure if it was the PC Manager clearing that decided to get rid of some of the information or corrupt something in Chrome, but I restored the profiles except for one, and then I was trying to discover how to restore a single profile from a backup. And it does not make it easy to identify which profile is which backup, but I was able to find where Google profiles were saved. And you can't find this on even ChatGPT doesn't have this answer yet either. I found in the user data, there are profiles that are listed as default, and then profile 1 through profile 8, 9, however many you set up. But if you've used one and then you changed it, deleted it, and add a new one, that doesn't necessarily correspond to the same number. So the numbers are somewhat randomized as to what profile they associated with, and they're not in the order at which you used. However, you can make a profile, do something with it, and you can see that the date on some of the files in that profile changes. And the data inside all these profiles, that user data might be 6 or 7 gigabytes of information. So it's not a small amount of data. Inside a profile is a file called preference. And if you have a utility like Notepad++, you can pull it up in a read mode. You do this while Chrome is not running, of course. You don't want to cause other errors. But inside the preference file, in about 5 or 6 lines, you usually can find the username and the email account that is associated with. So you are able to determine this is profile 5, this is profile 6, this is the one that I use for my brother Tim. Yes, found it. And you can restore it and then try and relink it, and sometimes it will work. Not always. I got lucky on one. I wasn't going to try it with all of them. But I knew all of the passwords and I had access to any of the recovery on the other profiles. Okay, so, and just restoring a profile into the disk doesn't make it work by itself. You can use the dates to try and figure it out. One thing you can do is you can add a profile, okay, and don't connect it to an email. Just add the profile, shut down Chrome, then you can go into this directory, find the profile that you just created, and then you restore the contents from your backup profile over that profile, and then you reload Chrome again, and then it understands, oh, I know who you are. Oh, you just want to re-sign in again? Yes. Click, click, done. So that worked for me, but it might not work in future versions of Chrome. Other things I've noticed in Chrome that I didn't put in the presentation. Now, when you save the passwords, they've vacillated on this several times now. Originally, when you save the passwords, it saved your Google account as one of the passwords. Then for a long while, they just deliberately cut it out. They wouldn't show you the password of your Google account in your exported passwords. Now it's back again. I don't know if it'll stay like that or not. So if you go into Chrome, go into your passwords, slide down in the extra settings and say, export my passwords to an XLS, to a CLS, comma delimited file. Yes. And you load it up with Excel. Now you can see the Google account and the password on it. Don't know if that only works with other profiles other than your own. It seems to have saved mine too. So, okay. So the drivers were kept. When I reinstalled my Not Another PostScript Scanner 2, I was able to pull my Not Another PostScript Scanner 2 profile from a backup, and all of the profiles, then it restored all the ability to scan all of my devices, and I didn't have to load any drivers. So that, oh, you reconnected, good. Had to remember to put 7-zip back. System internals was already there for me. I was lucky because I expanded the zip file in the download directory and just left it there. So it was ready and waiting when I'd restored Windows 11. And I had to do a bunch of other little things, camera control apps, SpecE, VLC. VLC you need if you do any sort of videos. OBS Studio, Handbrake. Before I was going to run off and possibly be without Wi-Fi, I remembered to install PDA-Net, which is a way of connecting your cell phone to your computer, and then you have an internet when you don't have Wi-Fi access. But I thought that better to do that now while I'm doing this rather than wait until later. It did preserve the Wi-Fi SSIDs and passwords with Windows Reset. I did have to put the brand new copy of Zoom down, and I had to do another Office update in PowerToys. So, funny thing about restore points, I kept going in and changing my amount of space for restore points to 5%, but Windows 11 keeps resetting it back to 2%. That means you save maybe 2 restore points, and then it runs out of room because each restore point is probably about 7 gig. So not sure why it keeps overwriting it and resetting your amount when you want to save more, but several times I've set it to 5% and gone back in to check it, and it's back down to 2%. So that means you have perhaps yesterday and today is the two restore points you might have. I did make a new recovery flash drive. Now, if I had a recovery flash drive for the newest version of 25H2, I probably would have been fine. But didn't know if I had it or not, but I had not created one, so I took the time and created. It's going to take about 4 hours to build a recovery drive right now. And if you're going to do any major updates, you probably need to update the recovery drive. But if you don't have the recovery drive, it's going to be harder to reset a machine unless you're just going to do the same thing I've done, do a full Windows 11 refresh. I did return to the location where the problem first occurred. I had to reload the printer support software for that printer, but other than that, nothing happens after that. So takeaways from this part of the presentation. You should use your backup utilities and make frequent backups. Probably weekly would be better than every other week. I found that if you save your install files either on external media or in a folder with downloads, that's a good place to hide them. If you have OneDrive turned on, the download folder is never touched. So it doesn't automatically start backing those up to your OneDrive source. I know OneDrive is advertised as a recovery option, but I think it's too fragile a item to be considered a true recovery because it wants to overwrite them if the dates change. And if somebody is going to compromise all of your files, it's going to write them here. It's going to write them on OneDrive. You got 2 copies of the same thing you can't use. You should create a recovery flash drive. If you can enable restore points to give you additional protection, that sometimes helps. And you may want to occasionally do a full device scan with your antivirus scanner, just in case when you got it on your machine originally, it didn't look like a virus, but now with the updated antivirus signatures, it might recognize it as one. So that's what I have so far on Windows 11 Reset. Any questions on that before I go on further? Okay. No, I don't see any hands raised.
I have a question.
Sure.
I don't know if anybody can answer this one. My computer has a C drive and a D drive. And I have restore point enabled on both C and D, and it's using, 6% off each. Does that create, does that mean I'm going to get the equivalent of 12% if I only had a C drive?
No, because it saves them on the drive that you use it from. So if the file is on drive C, the restore point has files on drive C. I don't know what you have, how you have C and D. If you only have data files on D, it doesn't make sense to put a restore point on D, unless it's saving copies of files and you're recovering a backup copy of a file somehow. That's about the only thing you would use on a non-system drive, restore point stuff.
I turned it on not knowing what I was getting out of it.
Yeah, I mean, there is a way to view your restore points, and it'll show you what it's saved. I mean, at least the dates of when it was saved. And then a couple things you can do. If you have a file that you want to question whether or not it was saved, you can do a right-click properties on it, and so you can say, like, restore to a previous version, and it will show you if it has previous versions available.
Oh, right.
Because it stores your previous version in the restore points.
Yeah. I found Windows 11 to be a lot worse with restore points than Windows 10.
Oh yeah,
Um,
definitely
my
so.
last my last computer, when I set aside a certain amount of space, I knew I had at least a half a dozen restore points going
Yeah,
back more than a week.
yeah,
And I once had to do a system restore, and I chose one that was like 8 days ago, and it literally took like 2 or 3 hours of my computer sitting here, with a message on it, and me wondering whether or not I did something wrong or right. And when it was done, the problem I had with the network was gone.
yeah. But did it come back
Um,
and say after 3 hours I'm unable to use this restore point? I've
no,
had that
no,
happen.
no, but I've
Yeah.
had that happen in Windows 11. Yes.
Yeah, Windows 11 is cutting down the amount of restore point space by itself because it uses something for the shadow copy, and as a result, it keeps on setting it back to the default of 2%. I don't know if they're going to ever fix that or not, or do I have to raise that as an issue with Microsoft? So
Yeah, I'm
supposedly
going to
there's
keep
a
an eye on that
couple of
now.
ways. There are a couple of ways to override it and do some settings like setting a hard stop and said, yeah, I want the backup to be 15 gigabytes period. And you go in with a PowerShell command to set that.
Yeah. Well,
Yep.
what I do now is I created a batch file, not a batch file, but a PowerShell script
Hmm.
that creates a new restore point and gives it
Okay.
a new name. And I run that once a day.
Okay.
And so that I have every 24 hours, I have a new restore point.
Yeah, that might work. Either that or start doing incremental backups every day.
Well, I do that. I do
Yeah.
differentials.
Yes. Okay. Same thing.
But regarding using OneDrive or any other drive as a backup solution, if it synchronizes your data and you get a virus on your C drive, it's going to end up on OneDrive.
That's right.
Um,
Well, that's advertised as your Defender. And what is the term they use? I got to go back and look and see what do they call it. Um,
um,
Anti-malware protection or something like that. I think they advertise it as.
yeah, but it has to catch it. If it doesn't catch it, you're screwed.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's right. It
Um,
has to. Yes.
so anyway, this in a couple of weeks, I'm going to be giving a presentation to the Sarasota group that's going to include a section on a program called Copia Backup, Kopia.
Okay.
It's an open source program that runs on Windows, Linux, and Mac.
Hmm.
And by default, it either goes to a local disk or to a cloud drive.
Hmm.
And the cloud drive that it includes by default is Backblaze. And if any of you have ever if you haven't looked into Backblaze, you can get a free 10 gigabyte account. So if you want to play with it, they give you 10 gigs for free. But the
Okay.
Backblaze B2 is a pay-as-you-go service. You don't buy a terabyte or 2 terabytes or 3 terabytes. You pay
Hmm.
as you go. So
Okay.
if you're only using 10 gigabytes, it's completely free. If you're using 100 gigabytes, let's say, the cost comes down to about 60 cents a month. So if you have, let's say you have a terabyte of critical data, they charge $6.50 a month for that.
Hmm.
But
Okay.
if let's say your important data realistically will fit into 100 gigabyte. Um, Using Copia with Backblaze or using Backblaze with any software, they don't include the software. Copia
Yeah.
is the software that talks to the cloud. Um, and for less than $1 a month, it backs it up. It doesn't sync it. It backs it up. So
Hmm.
it's not connected. It's not a Y drive or an iDrive or a OneDrive. It's disconnected when it's not backing up. It's not even connected.
Okay.
So a
Well, that's
virus
an
can't
option
infect
right
it.
there. I use Macrium Reflect, and I'm pretty happy with the performance of that. But my backups are sitting right now at about 129 gigabytes. So, yeah, I
Yeah.
guess yeah, that's for each backup. But it only takes like 26 minutes to make a backup. So, Yeah, Sid, you had a
Yeah.
question?
Yeah, let me unmute. There we go. There we go. I am, it's funny, Bert, you mentioned that because I started installing Copier last night. I run,
You muted again, Sid.
Yeah.
Auto
not
mute.
sure how that remuted itself. Boy, it didn't want to hear me talk. So
So
as I
you
said, I started
installed
installing
Copia.
last night. I started. It's not running yet because I run a Proxmox backup server on a separate machine, which backs
Uh-huh.
up the systems. But the main system has an external drive which doesn't get backed up as part of that. So what I want to do with Copia is back up directories of that external.
Mm-hmm.
And I was trying to figure out how to set up across the network then to I have to do a mount to do that, and I
Oh,
haven't.
yes. If you're talking about using a local server, so
Yeah,
what you do is you need a second computer that's running, whatever the
got
operating
it,
system is,
got it. Yeah, that's running a
and
second Proxmox.
right, and you run the Copia software in there, and you give it the command to have it run as a server, and you put the hard drive on that, and then your server that has the data on it that's important, you run Copia there, and when you say you have a backup location, you tell it that you have a Copia server, and it'll ask you for the information that you created on the other PC, and it'll back up across the network to that other drive.
Okay, that makes sense. That makes sense.
If you do mounts on other computers, bear in mind you have to either have the mounting unrelated to the bootstrap so that you bootstrap your machine first and then mount your external required drives second. Otherwise, if it's part of the boot process and it has to reattach these things every time it boots, you can have race conditions if two machines get rebooted at the same time and then the mounts fail. So you have to be careful of that. What we used to do with our old Sun 3 servers, we would first boot up and export any of our drives for available for mount first. And then after that was done, we would then make the mount points for the things we needed on other servers. So the first thing after everybody came up, they would come up and they'd share all their stuff first, and then they would cross mount what they needed to. But
Okay. Yeah,
that's more
yeah,
difficult.
yeah. Well, the other thing I'm running on that same box is Veeam Community Edition. And Veeam is corporate level. It does a lot of stuff. And the community edition allows you up to 10 nodes for free.
Okay.
Um, I say nodes because it doesn't have to be a machine. It's anything that attached that gets backed up is a node.
Okay. Yes, Sanford.
My question actually is for Drew. Drew, does Copia
Yes.
compress the files?
Yes, I was just looking up the details of that.
And do you have to have like a
Copia,
recovery disk
Cop,
available to extract this
Cop,
stuff?
well, Copia uses several space-saving techniques. It does compression. It does what's called deduplication, which means if you've got the same file stored on two different drives, uh, two copies of the same exact file, it'll recognize that and it will only back up one file and have a pointer to the other location so that it doesn't, you can have an extra 2 gigs or 4 gigs or 10 gigs of duplicates and it won't go as far as it won't count against your backup. Um, and the way that it does its incremental snapshots is every time you take a snapshot, it backs up only the blocks of data that have changed since the last snapshot. So if you have a 2 gigabyte file, that's a mail, let's say it's a PST file or a mail file, and certain blocks of that file change, it only backs up those blocks. It doesn't back up the whole 2 gigabyte file again. So, and then it encrypts everything as well. And you can access the data from any computer that has a copy of Copia on it.
Okay. And you mentioned something about the fact that Copia will work in server mode or on a server.
You can, when you go into the Copia software in and it opens up the GUI, the first thing it asks you is where you want to keep your data.
Okay.
One of the options is a Copia server.
Okay. Okay. I guess what I was leading to is, can you run this Copia on a server to back up the server?
You can run it on Windows, you can run it on Linux, and you can run it on Mac.
Okay. Thank you.
I have a friend of mine who's in a Linux group, and he relies on Copia and Backblaze. That's what he uses for his backups on his computer. He pays about $3 a month to keep his data online at Backblaze. The nice thing about using another machine in your house and have it be a server is the two computers are not connected with Windows. There's no drive letters mounted. There's no way for a virus to jump from one computer to the other.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions?
Totally different thing. I tried sending a chat and I get a message in the chat that says message can't be synced to this meeting chat due to settings or because some participant Zoom workplace app can't support this feature.
I never saw that before.
Yeah.
Yes.
Change your display name to your name. No, that's one thing it said. Okay.
So you did get that one. Okay.
Yes, I did.
All right. And I sent.
Can't be synced due to settings or because some participants Zoom work can't support this feature.
Well,
that's weird.
You sent me a message and I got it.
Okay. Hold on. Let's do this.
But I don't have any messages from anyone. In the everyone field, I don't have any.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I don't see anything in chat either.
Let's do this. Okay. My computer. Good. All right. Let's see. I want to send this and all right.
Oops.
This and there's one other. This one. Oops. I just unselected everybody. Okay. All right. I'm going to try and send this. Send. Okay. Looks like it's going right now. So I'm sending you copies of the presentation in chat. Well, I sent it to Sanford. Sorry. I need to send it to everyone. So let me resend it again. So it worked going to Sanford. Okay, Harry Nelson is coming back in. And this one.
Oh.
Good. And send. Okay, yeah, it's going to everyone now. So
no,
I can send.
Oh, here it is.
Yeah,
there it is.
All right, here we are.
I just got 3 files.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, that's what I said.
Oh, let's put that on the desktop.
Okay.
Put that on the desktop.
Yeah.
And put that on the desktop.
Okay, good.
Okay.
All right.
And so I've got a message from Sanford in the chat, and I've got 3 items from Ed.
Okay, then you got, so chat's still working. It's just gave you an error message that we don't know how to handle. All right.
Yeah.
Anyhow, this is the other thing that I had tonight. I've had this rainforest automation EMU2 for over 11 years, which connects to my smart meter via Zigbee. And I saw under Home Assistant Green that I found it can support the EMU2 to capture display energy usage. And I think, wow, that may be just what I was looking for here, because it only has a little tiny LCD display, lets me see today and yesterday, and that's about as far as it would let me see. So I was going to add this to my Home Assistant, but then I read some more messages about it. It says, well, it's going to need power. You don't want to pull that much power out of your Home Assistant too, so you need to have a hub. And not only that, it should be a USB 2 hub instead of a 3, because USB 3 hubs can interfere with the 2.4 gigahertz, the Zigbee, and 2 with the Wi-Fi. So I thought, okay, fine, I'll get a USB 2 hub and plug it in and power adapter, and it almost installed itself for me. I mean, I just plugged it in. It was already, I'm trying to set it up, and like, it's already set up. You want to do this again? Like, okay. You knew what I was going to do before I did it. So after I installed it, it's called a Raven device. It shows up like this in wherever home office, I put it in the office section. So it tells me what the firmware that's running on it, hardware. I mean, I didn't even know what hardware and firmware it had, but it told me. Basically, it knows the price per kilowatt that I put in through ComEd. 19 cents is a rough number. Then it was showing the current power use in the house at the time, which was 612 watts or whatever. Has the total number of kilowatts since my smart meter was installed, I think, in 2015. So I haven't quite used 100,000 kilowatt hours yet, but I'm almost there. When the total energy received is a misnomer. It's actually able to see if I had solar panels putting energy back into the grid. It could actually see that as well. So I was quite impressed with that. Anyhow, the initial energy dashboard looked like this after I installed it. Nothing really to say. There's no data to show yet. So we'll see what happens after I do this. So on the dashboard, it showed these devices, okay, and it showed all my other devices I had. The price for my service is not dynamic. I can manually change it via the ComEd web interface, and the total energy use is probably since the smart meter was installed. And again, the total energy received is if you have something going back to the grid. So after I had it up and running for a while, I watched, this is what my power demand was for the house. Not a lot. I didn't have a lot of stuff running today. The power demand exposed entity does not, I can't ask my G home person about, what is the current electrical demand, because it doesn't quite understand the term, and it's not exposed. The Google Assistant won't do it. And then after running it for a while, I actually can see the utilization that I was expecting. So electricity utilization at this point in time, before the meeting started, was about 4 kilowatt hours were expended today. So, and then as it's running, you will have this little dot going between the grid and your home. And I assume that if you had more power at home going back to the grid, the dot would be going in the opposite direction. But that was something else that I thought I'd bring in as well that was interesting. So, and it's continuing to function now. It's happy. It's relatively happy. Hopefully, after several days, I'll see how this works. I don't know how far the history will go back. I've seen things that say if you Home Assistant will normally save about 10 days worth of history. And then if you want more, you can retrieve it with a download into a CSV file, and then it goes as far back as you have data. But something else that was interesting, I finally got around to doing that. There's a couple other things that I need to do as well, but they're not computer related. Questions? Terry, if you wanted copies of the presentation, I sent them in chat, so they should be available in your chat, because I think you just joined right before I sent them. Yes, Sanford.
Okay, you put in there your ComEd costs.
Yeah.
And I'm assuming that you're on net metering.
No, not really.
Okay, but if you were and you
Yeah.
had lower costs at night versus the day, can you set this program to adjust for that?
It will automatically keep track of it. Because if you set the net metering cost, it takes it from your smart meter. So your smart meter actually has been told what it is, and this handshakes with the smart meter. So if you have a 4.8 cents per kilowatt hour based on other things, then you can have that number. I think you may need the newer version of Rainforest Automation, the Eagle, to do some of this stuff too.
And is
But
this pulling its rate from your meter or is it pulling it from the device you installed?
no, it's pulling it from the meter because I have to change it on ComEd, goes to the meter, and then the meter sends it to my Rainforest Automation. Yeah, it's pulling it. The Rainforest Automation is pulling it from the meter. So and the meter has been told that, and that's the way I change it. So if I want to change it, and I have had to change it in the past when the rates went up, I would actually go into the ComEd website because it sees that I have smart meter and I have the Rainforest Automation there. And I said, you want to change your cost? And yes, I change it up to 19 cents. And that's how it goes. Now it could actually, I mean, you could try and figure out the whole thing if you were doing just the basic cost. I know that the basic cost is maybe 9 cents, 10 cents a kilowatt hour, but then you're paying for the delivery charge as well. And when
And
you
the
add the whole
overhead and
thing
everything else.
together, yeah, it turns out to be 20 cents a kilowatt hour. Yeah. Take how much you paid, take the number of kilowatt hours, do the math.
That's the way I do mine.
Yeah. But usually, not always, but usually, when I get the home energy report from ComEd or something, I get the thing that says there's me, there's my efficient neighbors, and then there's everybody else. Not always. If I have the air conditioning running, I'm in the middle of the efficient neighbors. But if I haven't run the air conditioning, typically with weather that we're having now, I have fans in windows and I can turn them on and off based on, I could actually do it based on outside temperature if I wanted to. But right now I manually control it. I look at what the weather report says and said, okay, when is it going to start getting warm tomorrow morning? Okay, set this thing for turn off in about 7.5 hours. Done. And at that time, they go off. The only downside to setting a timer for turning off a device or turning on a device is that if you manually go in and turn it on and off by toggling the switch in the app, it doesn't cancel the timer. The timer is still going. So if you turned it back on and the timer tells it to turn it off again, it'll turn it off. Yes. Actually, I could show that. Let's see. Okay. See if I can pull that guy up here. Need bookmarks. Okay. Oh, I got to do it the other way. There, that's all bookmarks and side panel. Thank you. This is the one I want right here. Good. Okay, now I can do this. Share. Okay, so this is right now what I can control from my home assistant right now. I do have a lot of things. But if I click on the energy grid, that's showing me basically what the house is currently utilizing and how much energy is used so far today. And if I had multiple days, I could go back and forth on this as well. And you can click on some of these things and expand them as well. It's pretty nice. I mean, considering I only had the other interface on the little device and I couldn't make any changes to that. Yeah.
You should can that and sell it. I'd buy it.
I mean, this is freebie stuff that comes with Home Assistant. Home Assistant had it built
Yeah,
in.
but there's a difference between buying it and configuring it.
And like I said, when I plugged it in after I did this, it automatically configured itself. The harder part was trying to get the rainforest connected in the first part because it's got to do a Zigbee bonding with the meter first. So they give you a whole bunch of stuff you got to enter into your rainforest automation, and then it connects to the smart meter. And after you've got it connected to the smart meter, then we can do all this wonderful stuff. Now
Yeah, so
yeah,
it's not as easy as downloading an app.
no, it's not. But it is an interesting thing. And I've had this thing for who knows how long. I mean, the rainforest, and I sort of hesitated at the time. I didn't want the Eagle because the Eagle was the one that would connect directly to the internet, and I said, do I want it connected to the internet and Zigbee at the same time? Technically, the Zigbee does interfere with some of my Wi-Fi channels because they were using Zigbee channel 11, which is approximately in the middle of Wi-Fi channel 6. So when I was doing wireless captures with Wireshark, I would notice some interfering packets that looked like they were 3,000 bytes long. And I think that's too big. It can't be bigger than 1536. Why is this packet so large? And then I realized that it really wasn't a true packet. It was interference from Zigbee. And once I figured that out, yes, it was solved. But anyhow, that's one of the things. The nice thing about that I really do like about the Home Assistant is it's a very small box, and I've had a presentation on this before. It's about maybe about 3.5, 4 inches square by maybe an inch thick. It draws like about less than 5 watts. So I have no problem plugging that thing onto a UPS and keeping it up and running for control of my home if I need something like that when power goes out.
Yeah.
So,
I still remember watching your presentation of that.
and
Isn't the
it's
box kind of like a little greenish?
yes, it is. It's got a slight green cast to it. It's called Home Assistant Green. They don't make the yellow anymore, which used to be you bought your own Raspberry Pi 5 or 4 and put it inside of it, but they stopped selling that package. The only thing that is kind of irksome with Home Assistant, there's at least 2 or 3 core and or operating system releases per month. So every time I log into it, it's got 1 or 2 upgrades to go in, and okay, let's
Wow.
do it, reboot. And occasionally, when it reboots and it reconnects to some of the other utilities like Blink, all of a sudden you get a text message on your phone for Blink and said, "Here's your two-factor authentication PIN." What the heck? Who's accessing my Blink system remotely? No, it's the Home Assistant I just rebooted. And it has a message on the screen, and I pull it up and it says, "Yes, we can connect to Blink. We're waiting for the two-factor authentication. Please enter your PIN code here." Put the PIN code in, reconnected to Blink. It was happy. I'm sure it would also work with some of the other vendors out there, probably with Tapo Video or with Ring Video. Yeah, it's very capable of doing both of those. So now it doesn't quite re-render pictures of the house, Sanford. So it's only a 4 gig machine, I think. I think it's got 4 gigabytes of machine, but it does have, unlike Raspberry Pi, it does have 32 gig of eMMC memory on it instead of an SD card.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's one of them.
So Rainforest is an app that you buy separately from the box.
No, Rainforest is the utility, is the box that you plug in, at least the one that I had. See that's the one I have.
Oh, so,
Emu 2, right there.
okay. So you go to the Rainforest website and you buy this gadget.
You can buy him or you can buy the Eagle. the Eagle might be even better because it has both Wi-Fi and the Zigbee in it. There's the Eagle 3. There's no display in the Eagle 3, okay? But it's got a web browser interface, so you got your phone, you can look at it at any time. You could do the same thing that I just finally implemented with home automation. But it'll interface there too, I'm pretty sure. If it's got the Raven interface, the Raven code, it's a Python script that runs. So, yeah.
Wow. So
And
I could buy that. It wouldn't cost much money.
no, I bought this on Amazon when I bought it, and it was almost the same price. Because I found my receipt for my Emu 2 from Amazon in 2015. It was in my receipt folder for 2015. Said, okay, where's my receipt for Emu 2? Oh, here it is. Boom, popped right up.
Yeah. I would want the Wi-Fi ability.
And that's where the Eagle 3 comes in. There used to be an Eagle 2. Now it's an Eagle 3. This one, the interface is basically through the USB connection, because this one is just there for display and USB. And when I was trying to hook up the USB to a computer at the time, I wasn't getting it to show me the display. Somehow, with this one set up and it's going to the home automation, it's got the display running and it also gets the information. So it must be occasionally polling it or something and letting it go back. When you use one of these two devices with a smart meter, you will notice a difference on how the smart meter display outside looks. On the smart meter outside, when you don't have a Zigbee connection,
Read over here.
you
See that?
have
No, you stay away from that.
when you have the meter is in no Zigbee, you have the display and it toggles for 3 or 4 different displays. But when it's connected to Zigbee, it has your display of the power, current power usage, and the total power, and then it says busy.
Stay away from there.
And it flips back and forth to this, and it's always mostly busy. But the Zigbee will toggle between its transmitting to us from the smart meter, and also the meter itself talks to the next meter closest to it. So every 30 minutes, all the data is backhauled to concentrator points on the power line. You'll see them on a power line. It looks like a large can on top of a power pole, and that's the concentrator, and it transmits back to ComEd. The bandwidth of the system is such that it is somewhat limited. It takes a half an hour for it to send all the information. So they cannot make any faster amount. They could not send all the information they're sending any quicker without dealing with the overhead. So at 30-minute intervals, that's the limit of their overhead. They could do it slower if they wanted to and then have more data, but they can't do it any faster. So that's why you will see on the ComEd Get My Green button data online. If you don't have a rainforest automation, the only thing else you can use is Get My Green button data, which is a big a spreadsheet.
Is that also because they're sending data from not just you, but from everybody else in that whole service area that's running that?
Yeah, well, not only that, but my meter talks to next door, which talks to next door, which talks to next door, which talks to the pole.
Right.
I don't know how many places it's got to go through, but they backhaul it all the way through other nodes that are closer to the concentrator. I could never reach the concentrator directly because I think they're over 1.8 miles away.
Okay.
The ones that I've been able to see anyway. There's one on Lake Cook Road, and I think there's 1 or 2 of them on Long Grove Road. And I don't know what their capability is beyond that, because it's a little hard to climb the pole and look and see what the Wi-Fi FCC ID is on the side of the box. If I knew that, I would probably know what frequency they're doing this. If I thought they were doing it around 900 megahertz. and then backhauling the data to maybe microwave dishes or something.
Oh, come on, Ed. You can probably invest in a pair of binoculars that would allow you to see up there.
I have some that will do that. Actually, I do have something here. Let's see. Where do I have that? Let's go ahead and get this.
I would think a good telephoto lens could do it.
Well, I have the capability of some telephotos here. Let's see. Where is the one that I wanted to show? There it is, right there.
Why do I need this?
Okay, good.
I mean, you don't have to do anything that'll make anybody think you're engaging in espionage.
No. Okay, but this is a picture taken with my Canon SX 620 at about 120 feet.
Yeah, but that's not the concentrator.
That's not the concentrator, but he's definitely concentrating on what I'm doing.
Yeah.
Yeah, this guy was in my backyard, yes, but this is in the neighbor's yard in a tree about 30 feet up,
Isn't that
and I'm about 120 feet away from him taking his picture.
That's a falcon, right?
That's a red-tailed hawk.
Oh,
that is
a
big
red-tailed hawk.
I couldn't.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
We have them around here too.
Yeah, you can see. There's his red tail.
Got it.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's not as obvious on the juveniles, but that's an adult.
Yeah, that's definitely the adult. And then I have, let's see, I think this is the one. Yeah, that's him with that's a phone picture instead. Okay. And I don't
so
know
if you wanted to, you could probably identify the aggregators.
I might be able to if I can get close enough and it's not on the top somewheres.
Yeah.
I mean, if you can get close enough and then look at it and be steady enough, because usually they use really small print to these things.
Yeah.
Because you can't really read, if they, I probably could look it up. That's probably a thing that ChatGPT already knows. He's already got the schematics.
You might not be able to find that for public utilities because of security reasons.
Well, I'm sure it's encrypted anyway. So, okay, so the ComEd meters do an ITRON radio frequency mesh network operating at 902 to 928 ISM band. Okay, and then the 2.4 is what talks to the meters and does the data and does the individual mesh network to send it all the way back to them. So
now you know the rest of the story.
Yeah, well, that's the band you want to use for your software-defined radio chip. We're going to take it apart. No, I haven't figured a way to jam it yet, but I do know if you've ever looked in your green button data and around any sort of power outages, if the power outage occurred in the 28th minute, they've lost all of the records for that 28-minute period. It disappears. So you'll have gaps in the green button data, and they are unable to bill you for the power used during that time. So I wonder how Tim is doing right now with no power at all. He's obviously not consuming any energy. Yeah.
I'm guessing, I'm guessing unless things improve, we're probably not going to have a Linux meeting in a week.
Well, I think he's been out since about the 11th or so when they had so.
But I haven't heard anything about when they might be back.
Well, they're talking about maybe by Sunday, and from what I can see online for Hammond area, because I think that's where he is.
What caused the outage?
All the rain, all the tornadoes that came through. What do we have? 18, 19 tornadoes that went through the area in Illinois and Indiana.
And
they took out infrastructure. Didn't just take out the power pole to somebody's house. No, it took out the main lines, and that's the issue. Is they're trying to put the main lines back up.
If you go over to NIPSCO, you can see all the outages that they still show on a map.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think day before yesterday, they still had over 100,000 people without power,
Yeah.
and it's been since the 11th.
And
What they
most
had,
of it's in his area, between Gary and Munster,
Yeah,
all that whole area.
all the way down to Maryville. I mean, it's all over the place. Dyer, Indiana has like virtually no power down there.
okay.
I think my daughter had her wedding at a place down there in Dyer, Indiana, and it just, when they take out the main power poles and then it pulls everything else down. Oh yeah.
They said Gary, Indiana is out too, and that's oh boy.
Yeah, it's even worse because that may be the last one to get restored.
I mean, yeah, but Gary, oh my God, oh,
It's all over. You can go some of the outages went all the way past Michigan City. So yeah, it's a massive swath. And how many people are down there to do this? I mean, they got all their trucks and they got probably a good portion of ComEd trucks went to go help them.
wow.
Well,
Yeah.
but they didn't go until after they finished cleaning up Illinois, because those same tornadoes came through Illinois first.
That's true. That's true. I was real fortunate on this last outage. I had a couple of blips. I think the closest outage was 3 miles away, but it didn't take me down for more than a fraction of a second. So I was relatively fortunate about that. But the other stuff, people down there, if they were catching, Sanford, you probably got some down by you, right? You got on mute.
We skated by. It was pretty ferocious here. We thought for sure we were going to get nailed, but we didn't. Luckily, we did get a hell of a lot of rain and winds, but we skated by. It just went a little bit. It went south of me.
Yeah, there was some trees that got knocked over not far away from where my daughter lives in Chicago. And then we were wondering, how is your house? Oh, now is the apartment you were living in? How is your car out front? Because things fell over and they crushed cars and they're horrible. And I got a 100-year-old oak in my backyard that belongs to my neighbor. Won't quite reach my house, but it's about 30 inches in diameter and it's been dead for 2 years. And so I'm waiting. Is it going to be time for that one to fall? I left 3 of my walnut trees between me and it in place. Didn't want to touch those. They're about 20 inches in diameter each. So if it falls, it'll bounce off of them and fall into the hedgerow or onto my neighbor's house. I don't know which. I did watch in one of the windstorms in June that we had come through. I saw some trees that were bending over back and forth, and then it went, and it didn't come back. And that was a choke cherry that broke about 10 feet up. That was maybe about 8 inches in diameter at that high. And it just snapped it right off.
Well, they did say Illinois had 280 tornadoes this year.
Yeah, we're pushing for Tornado Alley. We're taking over the designation, but I don't know if Indiana is trying to take it away from us or not, because it's a contest, I think, right now if Indiana is going to get up there too. Not Oklahoma. It's just going to shake and bake down there.
Well, we lost a tree too, but luckily it went between our house and the neighbor's house. Otherwise, we would have, yeah.
Yeah, most of the trees I went out and took down myself.
Lots are got to get cut up. Yeah, yeah. Well, we lost power for 3 days here in Glen Ellen. So
Okay, so
homes, our neighborhood, and then the whole, the whole neighborhood was out.
yeah, that's what happens when they take out. Well, it helps if you know where you are in the pecking order and also what phase you're on. When they were redoing some of our underground utilities in my front yard, the guys that were burying the new line, because we have transformers in the front and everything is underground, he happened to have the chart for our local area. So somewhere's in my office here, I have that chart. because he said, "Oh, you want this? Here, you can have it." And it shows alpha, beta, and Charlie phases of my local network and who's on where. So I'm on Charlie phase. Across the street is alpha. And there's times when alpha is still going and I don't have power. I have to fire up my generator. But several of my neighbors behind me that are also on Charlie phase, I'll hear their generators kick on automatically if there's a power glitch, and their generators will just start up automatically, anticipating a longer power outage. I was also fortunate when they came out and they determined my gas line had a leak at the meter, so they reran a new connection to the main to my meter. And when they put in the new one, they upsized me to a 1-inch supply. And they said, okay, why do you do that? And they said, well, if you want to run the generator, you need a minimum of a 1-inch supply if you're going to run on natural gas.
Well, the tree went down with us. We lost the ComEd line, and then we lost the Infinity line too. So yeah, down they came with the tree. Yeah.
Well, it depends on if you have overhead utilities or underground. Most of my stuff here is underground, and even when there's a power failure for an extended period of time, usually my Xfinity continues to run until whatever battery supply is running some of the local concentrators, and then all of a sudden it'll burp on me. And then I gotta use either cell tower, or if I still have cell towers available, or some other mechanism. Drive to the library.
Well,
Hopefully they have power.
well, I mean, I know I'm county, so we're at the very end of the list to get who gets restored. They do the hospitals first, and schools, and the people live in the city, and finally, the county people get we're in the bottom of the totem pole. Yeah.
I used to have more issues with power delivery to my house and low line voltage and such, because I was on page 10 of 11 of all the connections on this line going back to the substation. So I do monitor my voltage levels when the ting sensor helps monitor them for me. So it shows me when I have high line voltage, and when you have low line voltage. I mean, it can get down and be consistently at 110 volts occasionally. Most of your utilities or your devices can handle lower line voltage. If they were built in Japan, they can go down to 100 volts because that's the normal nominal voltage for most electronics in Japan is 100-volt supply, 100 volts, 60 hertz. But most of like your laptops are good for 100 to 246 volts typically. So your universal power supplies, that's what they're designed to use. Doesn't work so well in places like India, where they have a 200-volt supply, but when their H-frames short out, they will all of a sudden have 600 or 700 volts across your power supply. And if you have a little USB power supply, it probably explodes. Yes. Interesting stuff that I've come to find out. The highest voltage I've seen here has been 131 volts either side of main. That's 262 volts coming in on the two wires from the transformer to neutral. But most of the time it's not. Usually if it is that high, I will call them up. And at a time, I was actually having some of the ComEd engineers asking me what my current voltage was, just so they didn't have to make a trip out. Yeah. In fact, when I put in the rainforest and I was doing some of that stuff, I actually was invited down to ComEd down in Oak Brook Terrace to do some They did some recordings of me for potential commercials and such. So never saw them, but they may still be out there somewhere. Any other questions we got? We still have some time here.
They had a program. It had pictures of inside of like 6 data centers. Absolutely amazing. The rows and rows of servers. Oh man, amazing.
Is that what's down the street from you? You said
know,
you're out in the middle of the Glen Ellen.
well, yeah, that's all politicians are talking about now. Nobody wants one within 3 miles of their house or whatever.
Yeah. Yes, Drew, you have your hand raised.
Well, the other thing is
You need to unmute, Drew.
Right. Thank you.
Yeah.
If you've ever been on a Zoom call and the file transfer option was disabled, or you just simply need to do an end-to-end file encryption with one person, so that you know that you're doing it peer-to-peer, there is a protocol called Magic Wormhole.
Ooh.
On Android, you run in the Google Play Store, there's an app called Wormhole, and there's an app for Windows called Wormhole. and so on and so forth, Unix, Mac, etc. And it works peer-to-peer inside your home network. It tries that first. If it can't, it goes out to some location service and finds the other person, and then allows you to put in a transmit code. You tell the other person what the transmit code is, and then they can retrieve that file.
Okay. I mean, when I've had to send things, I've either used WeTransfer. That usually is good up to 2 gigabytes. And if I've had to transmit something securely, well, then I'm not sure if this laptop I have installed it, but I got a secure FTP server that I can use and client and make the connections that way.
Yeah, this is a peer-to-peer solution.
Yeah.
If you want to do big files over the internet, I would go with there's a cloud provider called Mega, and they have a free service called TransferIt. The website is actually called transfer.it.
I think I've seen it as well. Yeah.
And it's an unlimited file size. They keep it for a week, and you can put a password on it if you want to.
Yeah, I think I've used it to send videos when we've had services at our church and somebody wants the raw 4K video, and it's usually maybe a couple gig in size, and I will send it to them that way.
That's a good that's a good use for it. It's good for large files.
Oh, yeah.
I just thought of it when I was thinking about, sometimes I'm on a Zoom meeting and the host has disabled file transfer. If you open up a chat with somebody on the Zoom call, or you want to send somebody a file, you can both run Wormhole and just paste the code in the file in the chat.
Yeah, that would work too. If something was disabled here, though, is probably by accident, because most of the time we don't disable anything on our Zoom calls, because I've seen some of the settings on it, and unless it was, like I said, by accident, or it was an error with the current version of Zoom, that could be it too. I always wonder, okay, what's broken this one? Especially when 7.1.0 got launched, and I thought, no, not on a bet. I'm waiting until .2 at the minimum. And it went from 7.1.0 to 7.1.1 to 7.1.5. Never saw the 2, 3, and 4. I thought, okay, there's a reason for that. They still didn't get it fixed.
Yeah.
And
so while you were doing your presentation, I looked up with ChatGPT information on the restore points on C and D. And it basically told me that I'm better off backing up my data on drive D. What it does is it allows Windows to use a portion of the D drive for volume shadow copy information.
Right.
It doesn't use it for a restore point for the C drive. The only disk space that can be used for a restore point is your C drive.
Which is what I thought, but I wasn't sure if it used it for the file recovery when you do a right click and restore previous version. That I'm not sure where
That's
that was
part of
stored.
volume. That's part of volume shadow copy, I think.
So in that case, if it's part of volume shadow copy, then it might still be on D. If it was a file that originally started on D, and you do a right click and said, "Okay, is there a version that I can restore to?"
Right, and that's a good reason to have the restore point enabled on the D drive.
Yeah, it's
You know,
just
give
that
it a few gigabytes.
it's a shame that Windows 11 keeps on resetting that DAC to 2% for some reason. I don't know if it's Windows Update that's doing it or something else, but I have set it to 5% twice in the last 2 days, and every time I've gone back in to check, it's back to 2%.
Yeah, I just looked at mine and it was at 2%, and I know I never did that.
Yeah, it moved it down. So Windows 11 wants to make a mess with it. Either that, or I got to find out another way of forcing a restore, a backup, a quick backup somehow, and either putting it on some other fast media or pushing it to the QNAP. Means I have to have the QNAP running all the time. That the downside of that is when it's up and running, it's going to draw 20 watts. And if I have a power failure while it's running, it's going to make the UPS go that much faster. If it after 2 a.m. in the morning, I normally have a setting on my QNAP that says go to sleep. And then I leave it in sleep state for hour of time before the next time I need my QNAP. If it's a week, it's been in suspend for a week, drawing about 1 watt. Okay, less than a watt. And then when I wake it up, yeah, you have an update here. Okay, fine. I need to reboot because it's been a while since I've been rebooted, so I'll have to reboot it. Wait for the entire boot time. But if you've ever gone through like a NAS server that's running Linux and you tell it to reboot, it takes a long time to shut down all the services and everything else. I probably have a lot more stuff running that I never use. Came out of the box, so I turned it on and said, "Yeah, am I going to use that? Oh, am I going to use containers? Probably, but never did." Yes, go ahead, Sanford.
Not related question. When I'm booting my PC, my Lenovo, during the boot up process, I'll see dialog boxes appear and disappear. It's so really fast, you can't tell what they are. You just see the outlines drawn and then they're gone. I'm assuming many of those might be some kind of DOS boxes, but I could be wrong. How do I know what the heck this is?
I'm not. I've seen those too. I'm not sure if it's the secure boot. Could be stuff in the secure boot that's doing that. Is it before or after the Lenovo screen?
Oh, it's when Windows is up and running. As you see
Yeah,
Windows, the whole back.
You can check your startup. You can check the programs that start up, but I would suggest instead you may want to look at auto runs because auto runs usually is a better tool to see what starts up when your machine fires up and see if there's anything that requires a DOS box.
Okay.
Yeah,
Command prompt.
auto runs from sysinternals is spectacular, and
Yeah.
it will find things that are starting up in the registry. And when you go into Task Manager and look at your startups, it doesn't show you things that are being launched in the registry.
No, it doesn't. You want to find them all, auto runs.
But it also
depends
on the software. Like I have a program called rclone UI, and the developer who wrote the Windows app did something with apps that, like when you do an automatic upgrade, the upgrade downloads the software, and then all of a sudden you see what looks like a black DOS box pick up and disappear, pop up and disappear. That's because the developer wrote the code and used certain features of whatever developer tools he used that requires the use of a DOS box to do something.
And usually, when you see those things happening, more likely than not, because it's so quick, it's updating registry entries. That it may actually be doing some of the file deletions too, but anything that takes long would let it sit there long enough that you could probably read it or freeze it. And a registry comes, loads, does the registry change, goes. So it just flashes the outline before it even did the refresh. So you're only catching a piece of it.
Yeah, I also have had silent driver updates and silent installs that behave that way.
Yep. Interesting.
But there also can be momentary error messages that just flash.
Yeah, that's the rough one. Yeah.
I've had USB device error messages flash by faster than I could read them.
Sometimes they're stored in the event log.
Yeah.
Sometimes not. When they are saved in the event log, you might be able to go down and catch it and find if you know what to search for and pull it out.
Yeah.
So. Okay. Well, I see Mickey's hands have hit the magic hour again. Again, if you have any other suggestions on possible meeting topics or anything, feel free to send me an email. Usually I'm pretty easy to find. And hopefully everyone else got a copy of all the presentations and everything. This is your chance to still pull it out before I shut down the meeting.
Thank you.
Okay, I got everything.
Good presentation,
All right.
Ed. Very good. Excellent. And
Okay.
as always, all your presentations are great.
I strive to please.
This was a good meeting.
Good meeting.
And how's your significant other doing? She's fine?
Yeah, she's doing fine. She had to have 2 extracorporeal shockwave lithotripsies in a month.
Oh.
Yeah, did the one, then did the other. And now it's looking like they got all the pieces of the stone on that one. It was a 1.4 centimeter stone.
Finished.
It's a big one, yes. And there's another one on the other side. So they're asking, you want to get blasted on the other side soon? No.
Those hurt.
Yeah, I'm going to let it.
Those hurt. Oh,
they're just sitting there quiet right now. It's quiet. It doesn't move. So that's good.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, good for you. Good for her.
Okay.